Give me 41 minutes and you'll finally learn mindfulness the right way. On today's episode of the Breakthrough Live, I have a very special briefing for you. No matter where you are in the world right now, I can sense that there's a lot of anxiety, panic over world events. The population is beginning to understand that the people that they vote for aren't necessarily the people that control society, and that the messages that they're receiving, people are having a hard time trusting them. So, in a world where everything feels like it's falling apart, those of you who are like me have always turned to the Most High. You've always turned within. I've spent years studying mindfulness, but only this week, only in the midst of global chaos, has a special video landed across my desk. I want to show it to you because this video comes from a professor. Actually, he's a teacher. He's a school teacher. But what he is saying, what he has been saying, this school teacher from China known as Professor Zhang, it's so fascinating to watch him work. Just a little background before we begin. This school teacher, this high school teacher, blows up on YouTube to the tune of 1 million subscribers in like a year, teaching Western history, teaching European history. What's so fascinating is that he's good. And right now, there are people who will take his likeness, take his teachings, and put them into AI specified content. They'll basically create an amalgam of his words, his teachings, his lessons, and put them into one coherent 10-minute video. One of these videos I want you to see tonight because it is going to be the focus point of us going beyond the mindfulness that sounds good, but ultimately serves the needs of those who seek to control rather than the true needs of the soul. And so, folks, we got to get to it. Tonight, we're going deeper and deeper. And if you're ready to live free beyond fear, welcome here. I'm Dr. Shawn, and I believe you do not need years to heal. You just need one real breakthrough. That's why I invented Transcendent Psychology, and I test it in the real world on real people on my game show, Countdown to Breakthrough, the only game show that heals your soul. On today's show, I have a clip from Professor Zhang. It is possible, by the way, it is possible that this individual is actually an operative from China. That is, this information is spilling around the internet very quickly. The thing about Professor Zhang is that it's hard to find anything that he's saying that doesn't make sense, which means that people in high places, people in power, they can decide when to tell you the truth and when not to, when to send a messenger to tell you the truth and when not to. And when you're looking to create a sort of instability within a nation, how convenient. What a time for this Professor Zhang to actually appear and pop up on the scene. Let's get to this. I got to show you what this is. By the way, twin, I see you. I see you. I see you. He's saying, good evening, Dr. Shawn. Twin, other twin, good evening, Dr. Shawn, and all happy new year. Felicity's in the room. She's saying, good evening, all. Good evening, good evening, good evening. Let's get to this because I want to break this down. Typically, we start with the episode of Countdown to Breakthrough. Today, we're starting with something else. Check this out.
Everyone knows the story of Detroit, how the auto workers built the middle class, how unions gave us weekends and healthcare, okay? So we tell ourselves this was capitalism's golden age. when workers and management found balance, when a factory job meant a house, 2 cars, college for the kids, okay? The problem is that in 1972, at the most advanced auto plant ever built, the youngest and most educated workforce in GM history basically said, fuck this. And what happened next changed everything. Not just for factories, but for every workplace, okay? Maybe even your own mind. The Lordstown plant was GM's crown jewel. They recruited workers with the promise that this wasn't your father's factory. GM executives would bring visitors from around the world to see the future of manufacturing. And within 6 months, these workers, who had everything the labor movement fought for, were sabotaging the line. So they were letting cars roll off with engines missing, slashing upholstery, okay, putting Coke bottles inside door panels so they'd rattle. The plant that was supposed to produce 100 cars an hour was managing maybe 40 on a good day. The problem is that the management was baffled, okay? These weren't oppressed workers fighting for bread. These kids had money, okay? They had benefits. They had what every union since the 1890s demanded. So, GM did what any rational corporation would do. They hired industrial psychologists to figure out what the hell was wrong with these people, okay? The psychologists spent months in Lordstown. They interviewed hundreds of workers, okay? And they discovered something that should have been obvious. The workers weren't sabotaging cars because conditions were bad. They were sabotaging because conditions were good enough that they could finally see clearly what they were becoming. One worker, this guy, Gary Briner, put it perfectly. A man becomes part of the machine. Every minute, every second, your movements are dictated. You're nothing but an extension of that line. See, previous generations were too busy surviving to think about what factory work did to your soul. But the Lordstown workers, they had full bellies and money in the bank. And with their basic needs met, they could feel something else. They could feel their humanity being processed into productivity. Now, here's where it gets interesting. GM could have slowed the line, could have given workers more variety. Some executives actually suggested this. But the psychologists, and listen to this carefully, the psychologists said that wasn't necessary. Okay? You didn't need to change the actual conditions. You just needed to change how workers felt about those conditions. So they introduced something called the Quality of Work-Life Program. Okay? Workers would meet in circles to discuss problems. They'd have suggestion boxes. Okay? They'd get to choose what music played in their section. They'd participate in, quote, job enrichment activities. Okay? But the problem is that nothing fundamental changed. Same repetitive motions, same transformation of human into machine, okay? They just added feelings to the process, and it worked. The sabotage stopped. Not because workers were happier, but because they were given the performance of happiness. They could express their frustration in meetings, okay? They could write their complaints on cards. They could feel heard. So within 5 years, every major corporation in America had copied the Lordstown model. IBM created quality circles. AT&T introduced team building. Okay? GE launched workout sessions. By the 1980s, okay, you couldn't find a Fortune 500 company without an employee engagement program. But the problem is that these programs all shared the same DNA from Lordstown. Never change the structure, just manage the feelings about the structure.
Okay, so you can already see where we're going. He's talking about making sure that productivity is honored at all costs, okay? And making sure you're already seeing where the mindfulness conversation is about to come in. That people who are interested in high rates of productivity well, they might be interested in making sure that those emotions stay under control so that that behavior stays under control. You feel me? So here we go. Let's get back.
Okay? Never slow the machine, just help workers accept their place in it. Never address the cause, just process the symptoms. Think about your own workplace. You probably have engagement surveys, feedback sessions, okay? Maybe meditation rooms or wellness programs, an open door policy where you can share concerns, okay? Team building exercises, mental health resources. All of this traces back to Lordstown, to the discovery that rebellion ends not when problems are solved, but when feelings about problems are properly managed. The really brilliant part was making workers responsible for their own emotional adjustment. Okay? If you were miserable at Lordstown after the psychologists arrived, it wasn't the line's fault. You weren't utilizing the quality of work-life resources. You weren't participating in the circles. You weren't managing your stress properly. The problem wasn't the machine. It was your relationship to the machine. Fast forward to today. We don't work on assembly lines, most of us, but we have something more sophisticated. We have apps that track our mood, wearables that monitor our stress, companies that provide therapy and meditation and yoga, not to change the conditions causing distress, but to help us bear those conditions more gracefully. Let me tell you about a study from 2019. Researchers looked at...
Okay, I just got to pause. Okay, so you're seeing, he's saying this ain't about managing or changing circumstances or situations, conditions. We don't actually care about things changing. We just want you to get back to work. So we're willing to do whatever's necessary in order to make that happen. But what I want you to understand and pay attention to as he continues to speak is what sort of what has to be missing from these therapy or meditation or these programs that they bring into these corporations or these organizations. Like, what has to be missing in order for people to merely remain pacified rather than transformed? That's the real point that I want to get at tonight. Let's get back
at companies that introduced mindfulness programs. These researchers looked at companies that interestfully. Let me tell you about a study from 2019. Researchers looked at companies that introduced mindfulness programs. These companies saw a 23% decrease in employee complaints. Sounds good, right? But here's what else they found. No change in actual working conditions. Same hours, same pressure, same fundamental problems. The mindfulness didn't solve anything. It just made workers less likely to articulate their suffering. Now imagine you work at, let's say, Amazon. You're in a warehouse. You're monitored every second. You piss in bottles because bathroom breaks hurt your metrics. Your body is breaking down. And Amazon's solution? They installed something called Amazen, literal meditation booths in the warehouses. Not more bathroom breaks, not slower quotas, meditation booths. So you can center yourself before going back to destroying your knees for $15 an hour. This is Lordstown perfected. GM psychologists would be in awe. You don't even need quality circles anymore. The workers voluntarily enter booths to adjust their own consciousness. They download apps to manage their own stress. They practice gratitude for having a job that's killing them.
All right. I mean, damn, like, you know what I'm saying? I like to keep it PG-13 on here, but damn. He said, look, you can go ahead and you can go ahead and center yourself inside a meditation booth so you can get back to the job that's destroying your knees for $15 an hour. I'm laughing, but it's really actually not funny, especially if you know people who have worked at these warehouses before. I'm not here to tell anybody how they should run their business. I just know what it feels like, or what it feels like to see somebody who comes back after doing, a shift at the Amazon warehouse. And so you have to ask yourself, what is the nature of these meditation apps? What's the nature of these mindfulness programs? Would you believe me if I told you that entire societies, particularly the Indus Valley civilization, known for controlling its population, from our standpoint, we would see it as control, but we could also say just organizing its population. They would do it around religion. Think of it like a what we know as Buddhism today. Buddhism had an ancestor, it had a predecessor. That proto-Buddhist religion would have been the one that the Indus Valley civilization would have practiced in. And the idea is that if you can just relieve your ego, then you can just be in the present moment doing whatever needs to be done. That is what mindfulness is. And there's been an explosion of research throughout academia talking about the effects of mindfulness. Frankly, I love it. The idea that we're asking people to go within, that people can, just by regulating their breath, just by being in the present moment, can actually change their body on a cellular level. Mindfulness has all kinds of marvelous effects. But in the philosophy around mindfulness, not the actual practice, not breath work, not meditation, not conscious transformation technologies, not the things that actually work, but the story we're telling ourselves around what we ought to do and why we need these techniques in the first place. It seems that from this video that you're getting here, and remember, I don't care what's true. I care about what gets us paying attention and asking deeper and deeper questions. So check this out. We got the breakthrough board. And right now we need to talk about the principle, the pattern, and the path. Out of this conversation tonight, looking like there's a principle in here, and it has to do with energy. Give me a minute. Because it's looking like there is a principle in here, and it has to do with energy. I like teaching in principles. The reason is because when I understand the principle of a thing, then I can think my way through an obstacle, even if I know nothing else. So I like teaching from principle. Generally speaking, I have the principles kind of mapped out before I come on live. Tonight, I don't. And so I'm sensing that there's a principle here, a principle about energy. Something like mindfulness without energy is dead. Mindfulness without attention to energy is dead. Because I keep going back to this notion of theft, that the major conflicts, including the ones that are happening right now as we speak, as the airing of this show, this live broadcast, where people are seriously considering that there might be another world war on the horizon. I don't say that to bring any sort of fear to you, only to mention that in order for that to be the case, there would have to be people who feel like energy has been stolen from them, or is about to be stolen. Again, that energy can be oil, that energy can be devotion, that energy can be attention, that energy can be people, can be labor, it can be inner resources in terms of social goods. And so if we got the sort of mindfulness that isn't paying any attention to divine frequency, we have a hollow mindfulness. Let's get to the principle. So I'm going to say mindfulness. I'm going to say mindfulness without attention. I even like, mm, mm, mm. It's an I. All right. Now it's an I. Without attention to divine frequency, It's hollow. I'm saying mindfulness without attention to divine frequency, that's hollow. When I say divine frequency, what am I talking about? You know, I am talking about love. When I say mindfulness without attention to divine frequency is hollow, the divine frequency I'm talking about, behold the soul, behold the soul and know that it is love. See, this mindfulness without attention to our own signature, how am I going to be able to tell what I should do right now if I am not paying attention to the energy that dictates my movement? Right? Like on a base level, if you don't understand nothing about what I'm talking about, you understand that if you have an itch on your neck, the very movement, the very feeling that you get on your cheek makes you determines the behavior, introduces the possibility that, you know what, let me go ahead and scratch that. I got a little itch on my neck. Let me go ahead and, you know, that the human process, the human life process is a constant interchange of energy. We're constantly paying attention to energy. And so what I'm saying is pay attention not to the fragmented energy, the energy of anger, the energy of anxiety, the energy of fear, because all of those lesser energies, anger, fear, anxiety, those are always about a person. Those are always about an individual. We're paying attention instead to an energy field that is wholeness itself. I define love as the end of the sense of separation. It is the end of separation itself, which means that it is oneness, which is why I draw it as a circle. No beginning, no end. Eternal. Love is oneness. And so if I want to avoid spiritual bypassing, if I want to avoid the sort of hollow mindfulness that can ultimately just have me doing the bidding of somebody else anyway, because they'll supply the story. If I'm just listening for instruction that's coming from another person, they'll supply the story. All you got to do is supply the labor. That's not freedom is our only problem here. If I'm working with somebody, you're working with that person and you're bringing all of yourself to that partnership or to that occupation, whatever it is. But if you're working there because secretly you're being guided by anxiety and fear, these lesser energies, not by divine frequency, not by love itself, not by wholeness itself, then I don't care what kind of mindfulness they give you, what kind of apps they give you. It's hollow, champ. I think it's one of the most critical missing elements to the scholarship on mindfulness as you see it in universities, as you see it published in, the Journal of Psychiatry or any real place in academia, is that we're talking about, yes, being phenomenologically, experientially in the present moment, making sure that our thoughts, our attention is just in the here and now with the activities, with the present flow of sensations. But it would take an altogether different caliber of researcher to be able to say, actually, the current flow of sensations is excellent and that's wonderful. But there is a higher frequency, a higher sensation that were you to follow, it would direct all of your steps, including the decision to either stay or leave your job, stay or leave your business, stay or leave a relationship. It does it all because it is all. That's why we say God is love. It does it all because it is all. It's the whole enchilada. It's the full circle. You understand? It's the full circle. And guess what? Mindfulness without divine frequency, without love, is hollow. That's our principle for the night. I like that. And really, you could say not just the mindfulness, but you could literally say any spiritual practice, any therapeutic practice that is without attention to divine frequency, of course, being love. I'm saying you need to be able to sense love within yourself at any point in time. What is it asking for you to do? What is love asking for you to do? What would you love to do right now? What would you absolutely love to do right now? Okay, so there it is. That is the question that is so powerful. And so now that we have this principle, what's the pattern? We've got this principle, but what's the pattern? Like when we're looking for the pattern, we're looking for that question that is, why would anyone get into this trap in the first place? What is it about the human mind that would make somebody fall into the trap of spiritual bypassing, of settling for these lesser tool sets? What, like, you know what I'm saying? Like what's the pattern here? Once I understand the pattern of something, then I can recognize it. Once I can recognize the pattern, then I can interrupt it. Once I can interrupt it, then I'm free. So again, what's the pattern? Our principle is that mindfulness without divine frequency is hollow. And our pattern, hmm, okay. Our pattern is that fear creates the bypass, or more specifically, fear creates the desire for bypass, and it happens so insipidly. It happens so quietly that a lot of times, without even knowing we're operating in fear in the first place, we miss the fact that we're vulnerable to bypass. That our present activity itself is looking to bypass a fear we're afraid to face. Someone put in the chat that makes sense. You see, the pattern is that fear, the emotion of fear, creates the need for bypass. I could even put that. Fear creates the need for bypass, creates the desire for bypass. And that functions automatically. Let me put this up here. This right here is most people's autopilot. It functions automatically. In other words, the fear unexamined creates this need for a bypass. And what happens is we just automatically go to the bypassing. We automatically go to the bypassing. I remember uh, the very first person that I met doing Countdown to Breakthrough. Okay, Twin saying I'm picking up what you're putting down. Absolutely. Okay. Oh, Devontae in the room. Welcome in. Welcome in. Welcome in with the twins. Okay. So we're talking about fear creates this need for bypass. And I'm saying, like, when I first went to Houston for the very first episode of Countdown to Breakthrough, for the very first person that we ran up on, um, he was like the light skinned dude with the what was man's name? He was the one that was dealing, like, in the tank top. He was the one that was dealing with like the money issues, right? And so, after our session, after we kind of worked together on the street, just on some random, he was like, "Hey, can I pull you to the side?" He was like, "Listen, man, like, do y'all smoke?" And so he's asking me and the cameraman. He was like, "Y'all smoke? Y'all smoke?" And I was like, "Nah, you don't smoke, bro." Like, you know what I'm saying? He was like, you know what I'm saying? Like, is it, he was like, "But is it cool if I smoke though? Like, is it cool?" And I was like, "Man, where are you trying to get to?" You feel me? Like, you want the hit, you want the high, you want the drug, you want the thing. It's giving you something, it's feeding something. What is that thing? What is that thing? Is it making you feel like you're in tune with things? Like, what is it? What's it doing for you? I'm not even hating on it. I'm not even hating on it. It's just like, what is it doing for you though? And which part of you believes that it needs that? I'm not hating. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, do you do whatever? But I'm just curious because if you don't want to give it up, I wonder why you think you need it. Where do you think it's taking you? And where are you trying to get to? Which is the other way of saying, where are you trying to get away from? These are questions. Because what happens is that we can pick up the weed on the basis that I'm not comfortable. I don't like the way things are going on in life. Let me go ahead and hit this real quick and you're automatically in a bypass. The subtle fear of, if I don't use this, if I don't augment my reality in some way, then that means I'll have to stay in reality. And I'm afraid to. I'm afraid to keep living in such a state of limitation. That's a big one. So what I'm saying is that for the spiritual person, for the person who's, a lot of times people run to the meditation cushion, they run to the app, or they run to some level of fear is causing that person to enter into a bypass. Being afraid and meditating is not a bypass. Meditating because you don't want to face a fear can be a first step, or it can be another mental numbing procedure, another place where you say, okay, I'm not even going to think about this. I'm not even going to. But in either case, remember, we go back to our principle. If the mindfulness that you are using, if the technique that you are using, if it is divorced from you sensing this love energy, remember, you cannot pick what you love. You just love what you love, which means somebody else, something higher, something beyond human put that there, which means that if I'm paying attention to just that love deal and I'm using my attention, my mindfulness, I'm using my awareness to bring me back into that frequency where the obvious choice is obvious now, well, then there's no need for a bypass. There's no need for a bypass. What you'll find is that love and fear can never exist at the same time. That's another principle for another day. But the point is that this fear, it creates the need for the bypass, and that bypass is on autopilot. We experience the fear. We don't even check. We don't even know what the fear is for real. If you ask people what they're afraid of, people are like, I ain't scared of nothing. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, people not knowing that just a few tweaks to their environment will put them in panic. They get that phone call that, hey, we're doing some layoffs today, and we just, thank you for being with the company. Okay, 20 years, Jim. You know what I'm saying? Like it's one problem away from being in a panic attack. Talking about I ain't afraid of nothing. What keeps you going? Are you serving love? Are you serving something else? Okay, so fear creates the need for this bypass. That's our pattern. And that joint happens automatically. It happens on autopilot. So now that we know the principle, which is that mindfulness divorced from love is hollow, and we know the pattern, that fear is what causes that need for bypassing. And either you're going to take the materialist approach, you're going to hit the drugs, the alcohol, you're about to hit the clubs, or you're going to take the spiritual approach, which is where you do the mindfulness, you do the meditation, you do the psilocybin, you do the DMT, you do the out of this world trips, you do the psychic expansion techniques, you hit the manifestation techniques. You dig what I'm saying? You spend all your time in the church doing a whole bunch of praying, but not doing the things that God is actually asking for you to do. You spend your time in the mosque doing all of the rituals, doing all of the praying in all the directions, but not doing what Allah is actually asking for you to do. Or you spend your time in the synagogue or on the meditation in the Buddhist temple, uh, uh, cushion, a cushion in the Buddhist temple, in the Sangha. I really don't care what it is. I care if there's love in it. That's the difference. We know our pattern. Now we need to know our path forward. We know that the fear is what's doing this automatic bypassing. We know that the fear is what's doing all this automatic bypassing. But the problem with the fear is that fear is so subtle, we often do not think about what we're actually afraid of. Yet we know we're one phone call from our knees, from being crying on the floor because something just went wrong, the unthinkable. You dig what I'm saying? Like, it's not rational to be talking about there are no fears. More important to understand what those fears are, even the small ones. Remember last week, Super Mario Bro was like, he quit his six-figure business because he said that there were like these termites of lack. Right? Yeah, it was a six-figure business, but he could see that within it, he was There were all these little small micro fissures, all these little cracks, tiny, 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 tiny. But they were telling him that if he didn't keep traveling the world, other people would love to do this, but he don't really love to do it. But at least he's being envied. If he can't do what he loves, at least he can be envied for doing what somebody else thinks they would love. It's the same way with fear. Basically, that's what he was dealing with. But it's these small, tiny cracks. You would almost have to take a microscope up to your own mind to find these seeds of fear that are quietly steering your behavior. It's a constant process for me. The only way, the only path forward. Before we actually even get to that, let me talk about with y'all in the chat. Okay, so yes. Okay, we got the new year. Okay, King Wolf saying I need to hear this right now. Absolutely. LOL, Cool J. Is that Devontae right there? Mindfulness is the beginning, the door to knowing who you are. Find out who. Absolutely. Absolutely. Mindfulness is the beginning, the door to knowing who you are. It's like, again, remembering that principle. I agree. Mindfulness is essential, but we're looking for the sort of mindfulness that allows us to tap into who we actually are rather than looking for the sort of mindfulness that just allows us to distance ourselves from the discomfort of emotion so that we can get back to doing what somebody else said we should do rather than what God said. You dig what I'm saying? Or rather what love says. If you don't like the word God, no problem. I use the word love. You don't like the word love? Okay, I'll use your true self. You don't like that? Then, hey, we'll use the universe. Whatever it is, we'll use nature itself. I don't care. Whatever the deep fabric of existence is, I want to be paying attention to that. That's the reason I'm here. Jeff Bezos got enough money. You know what I'm saying? Like his son got enough money. That's why I'm like, wait, what are we doing, kid? Like he said, get back to busting your knees up for 15 an hour. Bro, all right. I'm not hating on it either. I'm not, you know what I'm saying? Like it is what it is, but it's like, let it at least be what it is in clarity. Let it at least be what it is in clarity. Hey, LL Cool J, LOL Cool J. I like that. Is that Devontae right there? Put your name in the chat. I always like knowing the names in the chat so I can shout you out. Because right now, yeah, as he said, put your trays, the 333 in the chat if you're following and picking up what Dr. Shawn is saying. Twin, absolutely. Yeah, it's like that. It's like if you're understanding this, if you don't understand it, then you know what I'm saying, like say something. But we've covered the principle, we covered the pattern, but now we need the path forward. And again, I'm doing this thing where I don't know the teaching. I'm literally waiting for. We're talking about love. I'm waiting for love to speak. You feel me? Like that's what all the pausing is for. Is I'm like, the frequency is the teaching. You feel me? And maybe that's why the frequency is the signal. Here's the path forward. The path forward opens when we understand that the frequency is the signal. That the frequency is your signal. In other words, the mindfulness that we're talking about, it takes us to a higher level when we're allowing ourselves to be mindful of this divine eternal frequency, this voice of God speaking, this most immaculate feeling that I call love. You dig what I'm saying? The frequency, when I say frequency, I'm talking about the love frequency. This is your signal, which means I cannot know what I am to do until I am tapped in to the frequency. Why? Because the frequency is going to give me my signal. It's going to tell me my direction. It's going to tell me where I need to go. It's got all that with it. It comes with it. It comes with it. So it's like our path forward is to remember that the frequency is the signal. The frequency, it carries the signal. It's got it for you. That's what's missing from these Amazon Zen stations. They're not paying attention to the fact that true mindfulness means turning all the way within, not just to the surface level of, oh, I got some annoying thoughts I want to distance myself from, I want to create space from so I can get back to doing what I was told, but rather, no, I'm going to turn attention inward. Yes, be open and aware for the thoughts that are emerging, but I want to listen for the frequency underneath all thoughts, the frequency underneath the silence that all thought arises out of. I want to pay attention for that because that's where my signal will be. That's where that signal will direct my next step. It'll tell me where to go. It'll say, hey, look, go up the stairs. third floor. It'll say, no, go for a walk. It'll say, actually, you need to get about this job. It'll say, you know what? There's something to do here. I'm not done here yet. I'm going to keep showing up. The signal. It's like we've got this level of spirituality that we're cool with as long as it gets people to kind of be pacified, as long as it gets people to have no ego and therefore no sense of direction that is certain, putting people back into this sort of state of tabula rasa, this sort of state of blank slate mind. There's a use for that. But ultimately, our responsibility here is to recognize that we are here to be a part of the frequency, to be a part of this divine unfolding. And we can only do that if we're operating from the signals that God is sending to us, that love is providing for us, that nature reveals to us. As a result, the frequency is the signal, and that's the path forward. Return to the frequency. It provides the signal that will let you know whether or not it is time to sit or move. That frequency will let you know. You ain't got to worry about it missing something. It don't miss a thing. It cannot. That's because it includes all things. It has already calibrated everything for you. That's why I always draw it as a circle. Behold, eternity. No beginning, no ending. It's the reason that we say God is love. No beginning, no ending.